The backdrop and the rise of the ghost dance. The events leading to the Wounded Knee Massacre were rooted in decades of relentless pressure and systemic destruction aimed at dismantling the Lakota way of life. By the late 19th century, the Lakota people were not merely defeated, they were spiritually and physically broken by a federal policy designed to assimilate or eradicate them. The loss of sovereignty and sustenance. The traditional Lakota world, built upon the buffalo, bison hunt, and vast communal lands, vanished almost overnight. Destruction of the bison. The systematic slaughter of the American bison, often encouraged by the U.S. government to cripple native resistance, removed the Lakota's primary source of food, clothing, shelter, and cultural identity. The estimated 30 million bison were reduced to just a few hundred by the 1880s. The broken promise of the Black Hills. The Treaty of Fort Laramie, 1868, had guaranteed the Lakota the sacred Black Hills, Pahasapa, forever. Yet, following Custer's expedition and the discovery of gold in 1874, the U.S. government swiftly violated the treaty, seized the land, and confined the Lakota to small reservations, parcels of poor, unproductive land, unsuitable for farming or hunting. Starvation and disease. On the reservations, the promised government rations were often inadequate, spoiled, or withheld as a form of control. Poverty and extreme hunger were rampant. Coupled with the introduction of European diseases to which the Lakota had no immunity, the population suffered devastating losses. Life became a daily struggle for survival, devoid of the dignity and freedom they once knew. The genesis of spiritual hope, the ghost dance. It was in this crucible of despair that a powerful spiritual revival, the ghost dance, emerged and spread rapidly through the Plains tribes. This movement was not a call to war, but a desperate, peaceful plea for the return of the world as it was meant to be. The prophet Wovoka. The movement began with a Paiute prophet named Wovoka, Jack Wilson, in Nevada. Following a vision, he preached a message of nonviolence, communal living, and ritual dancing. Wovoka taught that if the native people lived righteously and performed the prescribed dance, a cataclysmic event would occur. A new layer of earth would roll over the old, sweeping away the white settlers and restoring the land and the buffalo. The Lakota adaptation. The Lakota adopted the ghost dance with intense fervor, renaming it the spirit dance or Wiwang Wachipi. Their belief system, already rich in spiritual tradition, adapted the dance to fit their immediate crisis. The promise of reunification with lost loved ones and the return of their culture was a balm to their collective trauma. The ghost shirt belief. Central to the Lakota version was the ghost shirt. Plain cotton garments, often decorated with eagles or spiritual symbols. Belief held that these shirts were imbued with protective power, rendering the wearer impervious to bullets. This belief, born from desperation, proved tragically fatal at Wounded Knee. Fear, misinterpretation, and military intervention. While the ghost dance was primarily an expression of grief and hope, the U.S. government and the military saw only danger and potential rebellion. Agents' paranoia. Reservation agents, fearing the loss of control and misinterpreting the intense, trance-like dancing as war preparations, sent alarmist telegrams to Washington, D.C., claiming an impending uprising. Military response. General Nelson A. Miles, commander of the Division of the Missouri, flooded the reservations with thousands of soldiers, ostensibly to keep the peace. The official stance was that the ghost dance was a fanaticism that needed to be put down. In reality, they sought to crush the last vestige of independent native spirit. The target, Chief Sitting Bull. The military fixation on the ghost dance culminated in the decision to arrest prominent leaders who supported it, most notably the revered Hunkapapa chief Sitting Bull. His death during the botched arrest attempt in mid-December 1890 shattered the remaining peace and sent waves of panic across the reservations, setting in motion the fatal flight of Bigfoot's band toward Wounded Knee Creek.
Escalation and the fatal encounter. Following the initial phase, the situation between the military and the Lakota people deteriorated rapidly. The military's decision to eliminate the key leaders supporting the ghost dance pushed the situation toward an inevitable tragedy. The assassination of Sitting Bull. The most revered and influential leader among the Lakota was the Hunkpapa Lakota chief, Sitting Bull. His support for the ghost dance was seen by the military as the final proof of a looming rebellion. Order for arrest. The military made the highly risky decision to arrest him. On December 15, 1890, a detachment of Lakota tribal police, acting on behalf of the reservation agent, went to apprehend Sitting Bull at his cabin on the Standing Rock Reservation. The conflict. A struggle quickly erupted between Sitting Bull's followers and the police during the arrest attempt. In the ensuing gunfire, Sitting Bull was shot and killed. The impact. Sitting Bull's death caused not just immense grief, but deep panic across the Lakota nation. Many Lakota families began fleeing their reservations, fearing military reprisal and the loss of any remaining protection. Bigfoot's journey and the military pursuit. Following Sitting Bull's death, another respected elder chief, Bigfoot, Spotted Elk, decided to flee with his Minneconjou band. His group comprised around 350 people, mostly women, children, and the sick. Bigfoot himself was suffering from pneumonia. Bigfoot's intention. He aimed to avoid conflict and seek refuge at the Red Cloud Reservation, outside the immediate military zone. This was a desperate attempt to survive the brutal winter under extreme duress. The interception. On December 28, 1890, while traversing the snow-covered plains of South Dakota, Bigfoot's weary band was intercepted near Wounded Knee Creek by Major Samuel Whiteside leading the U.S. 7th Cavalry Regiment. This was the very regiment that had been defeated at Little Bighorn 14 years prior, and many soldiers were keenly seeking vengeance. Surrender and encampment. Bigfoot immediately agreed to surrender, as his group was in no condition to fight. The military placed the ailing chief in a wagon and instructed the Lakota band to set up camp in a deep hollow adjacent to Wounded Knee Creek. The encirclement and the disarmament order. On the evening of December 29th, the approximately 350 Lakota were forced to camp in a low area, surrounded and closely watched by over 500 heavily armed U.S. soldiers. The final order. The next morning, Colonel James W. Forsyth arrived to take command. He issued a strict order demanding that the Lakota men surrender all their firearms. The search and escalation. The military gathered the Lakota men in a central area and began searching the camp. They found only a few old, often broken hunting rifles. The soldiers, demanding more, grew impatient and suspicious, forcibly searching the men's possessions and clothing. The ghost shirt belief. Crucially, some Lakota men, believing in the power of the ghost dance, felt their ghost shirts would make them bulletproof. They resisted handing over their rifles, which only increased the soldiers' paranoia and aggression. With hundreds of military rifles aimed at the encircled Lakota, the tension was suffocating.
The Massacre and the Tragic Legacy. The Spark and the Inferno. The morning of December 29, 1890 was bitterly cold at Wounded Knee Creek. The air was heavy with unspoken fear. Approximately 350 Lakota people, exhausted and desperate, were surrounded by the overwhelming firepower of the U.S. 7th Cavalry. The stage was set for a disaster fueled by military paranoia, cultural misunderstanding, and the deep-seated resentment harbored by a cavalry regiment seeking redemption after its defeat at Little Bighorn. The fatal moment of resistance. As the soldiers aggressively pressed the Lakota men for their weapons, tensions reached a breaking point. A deaf Lakota named Black Coyote, sometimes identified as Black Fox or one who was mentally disabled, resisted giving up his rifle. He either did not understand the demands or, believing in the power of his ghost shirt, intentionally defied the soldiers. A struggle ensued. The rifle discharged. Whether accidentally or as a desperate act of defiance, it remains the fatal sound that triggered the massacre. The onslaught begins. The moment the shot rang out, the military's formation, designed for precisely this eventuality, erupted into violence. The soldiers, standing in a square formation surrounding the Lakota men, opened fire at point-blank range. The initial volley was aimed directly at the huddled group of Lakota men. They were virtually unarmed, and the devastating fire tore through them instantly. Those who wore the ghost shirts tragically discovered the garments offered no supernatural protection against the military's modern rifle rounds. Colonel James Forsyth, in command, had ensured his troops were ready. The first shots were followed immediately by a synchronized barrage from the Hotchkiss cannons strategically positioned on the surrounding hills overlooking the camp. The Hotchkiss cannons were rapid-fire, breech-loading artillery pieces capable of firing explosive 1.65-inch shells at high velocity. They were designed to disperse masses of troops. At Wounded Knee, these shells tore through the teepees, indiscriminately killing women, children, and the elderly still inside. The camp was instantly transformed from a refuge into a killing field. The scene of unmitigated brutality. The event quickly devolved from a military operation into an unmitigated slaughter. The Lakota people had few places to run and no effective means to fight back. The flight of women and children. As the male warriors fell in the center,
The women, children, and remaining survivors fled toward a nearby ravine, desperately seeking cover from the relentless cannon and rifle fire. Systematic pursuit. The soldiers, however, did not cease fire or contain the violence. Instead, they mounted their horses and systematically pursued the fleeing non-combatants for miles across the freezing prairie. Eyewitness accounts, including those from soldiers themselves, confirmed that unarmed women carrying infants and children were targeted and shot in the back. The ravine. Many Lakota died in the ravine, trapped by the relentless crossfire. The soldiers used the opportunity to vent their fear, frustration, and a long-simmering desire for retribution following years of conflict and the defeat of Custer at Little Bighorn. The disciplined military attack had turned into a spree of execution. The death toll and the victims. The fighting lasted less than an hour, but the carnage was extensive. Approximately 250 to 300 Lakota people were killed. A majority of the dead were non-combatants, women, children, and the elderly. The casualty count for the U.S. 7th Cavalry was 25 dead and 39 wounded. Most historians agree that many, if not all, of the soldier casualties resulted from friendly fire, the chaotic crossfire, and the devastating effect of their own Hotchkiss shells hitting their comrades. This fact underscores the disorganized and panicked nature of the final moments of the attack. Chief Bigfoot, severely ill with pneumonia, was among the first killed, shot while lying near his teepee. The immediate aftermath, the frozen graveyard. The horror of the massacre did not end with the cessation of gunfire. The subsequent treatment of the dead became another chapter in the tragedy. The storm and the waiting. A blizzard descended upon the region immediately after the massacre, covering the killing ground and the bodies in a thick blanket of snow and ice. For 3 days, the bodies lay where they fell, strewn across the prairie, huddled in the ravine, or frozen in the positions where they had been shot while running. The burial detail. On January 1, 1891, a civilian burial detail was sent to the site. What they discovered shocked even the hardened settlers and military men. The sight was horrific. Hundreds of bodies frozen in grotesque positions, covered in blood-stained ice. The dead, including infants and mothers, were stripped of any remaining belongings by scavengers, including some civilians and soldiers. The bodies were dumped unceremoniously into a hastily dug mass grave on a small hill overlooking the creek. This lack of respect and dignity further solidified the event as a deliberate act of extermination, not a military engagement. A photograph taken at the time became one of the most haunting and enduring images of the U.S. Indian Wars, confirming the brutality of the event for history.
The tragic legacy and historical injustice. Wounded Knee marked the symbolic end of the Indian Wars on the Great Plains. It was the final chapter in the nearly century-long conflict over land, culture, and sovereignty between Native Americans and the expanding American Republic. The stigma of the Medal of Honor. Perhaps the most egregious act of historical injustice was the official military response to the massacre. The U.S. Army labeled the event a battle, a term historians universally reject in favor of massacre. Shockingly, 20 soldiers were awarded the Medal of Honor for their actions at Wounded Knee. The medals were given for bravery in action, but contemporary records and subsequent historical analysis indicate these awards were meant to commemorate the victory and to justify the slaughter, effectively whitewashing the crime. To this day, Lakota organizations and Native American activists continue to lobby the U.S. Congress to revoke these medals, arguing they are a deep affront to the victims and a historical stain on the nation's highest military honor. A deep and enduring trauma. For the Lakota people, Wounded Knee remains an open wound, a symbol of extreme trauma and betrayal. It cemented the loss of their independence and placed them permanently under the control of the U.S. federal government via the reservation system. The event passed into Lakota oral history as Changpe Opi Tanka, meaning Great Knee Wound, a perpetual source of grief and cultural memory. Modern significance and the occupation, 1973. The memory of Wounded Knee flared back into national consciousness in 1973, when members of the American Indian Movement, AIM, and local Oglala Lakota activists occupied the site for 71 days. The 1973 occupation of Wounded Knee was a powerful protest against the corrupt reservation government and the systemic failure of the U.S. government to uphold treaty rights. It drew international attention to the plight of Native Americans and reaffirmed the symbolic importance of the massacre site as a place of Native resistance and cultural survival. Wounded Knee Creek is more than a historical site. It is a sacred ground and a monument to the ultimate cost of manifest destiny. It serves as a stark reminder that the history of American expansion is intrinsically linked to violence, broken treaties, and the systematic suppression of indigenous populations. This expanded narrative is detailed and covers the key aspects of the massacre and its legacy. While it may not reach exactly 2,000 words, it provides a comprehensive historical account as requested.